Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at Mars retrograde through all 12 houses. Now I'm doing this as a part two, you could say, of the initial video that I did on Mars retrograde a couple of days ago. Mars is now turned retrograde in Aries, and what I want to do in this video is, according to your rising sign, we're going to look at the house position of Mars retrograde and basically talk about what kinds of topics or themes you might notice or expect to see as you go through this retrograde between now and the middle of November. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to put the real-time clock up, and we'll just kind of adjust the screen to give you a sense of this. So here we go. Now I'm going to put, let's put Aries on the ascendant. All right, so we're going to start off with Aries and just go round the wheel in zodiacal order and just talk about what it might mean if Mars is retrograde in each of the 12 houses. So if you are an Aries rising, you're going to have this Mars retrograde in your first house. Now, the first house was the place most intimately associated with character and psychology, as well as health and vitality. It is related to the very, in a sense, essence of your character. If you think of yourself as playing a character on a stage in this lifetime, the first house is sort of telling you about the character that you're playing. When Mars goes retrograde in this first house, it can be a time of major character revision. That is, you're reflecting more deeply upon your behavior, your actions, your way of being in the world, and maybe making some revisions or adjustments, especially around the topic of will, anger, frustration, how you assert yourself in the world. There can also be a period when Mars is in the first house where your health is called into question, your vitality, your spirit. You might just be looking at how effective you are, or how effective a particular strategy or outlook on life is. It can be a time where you're getting into shape, or adjusting your diet in some way. But it's a time of self-reflection for Aries. This is your ruling planet retrograde in your own first house. Self-reflection could be physical, mental, psychological. It might be also about your outlook in life. And sometimes with Mars in the first house, you're also going to be starting new things. But there could be some delays or setbacks before you can move forward in the way that you want to. So that would be a brief interpretation of Mars in the first house. We're going to put Taurus on the ascendant. If you're a Taurus rising, then Mars is going into your 12th house. Now, 12th house planets are often planets that we can't see that can also dog us. This is why the house is sometimes associated with hidden enemies. So if you're a Taurus rising, what I want to say is it's a good time to reflect on the way in which Mars is something of a secret or hidden enemy in your life. Or it could be a time of becoming more conscious of Mars, and that can be a good thing. So let's use an unconscious example. So let's say you really have a temper. Taurus rising doesn't seem like someone who would have a temper because you're a Venus-ruled sign. But remember that Scorpio, the ruler of your 7th house, says a lot about the qualities that you will tend to meet in other people that are like the polar opposite of yourself. So Mars is sort of the planet that's an opposite for you if you're a Taurus rising, which means that it might be in your blind spot somehow. So understanding Mars in your blind spot is important during this retrogradation. Looking at the way that temper, irritation, will, aggression, dominance, how do those things play a role in your life, in your relationships? It's a great time to become more conscious of the unhealthy aspects of Mars. You also have to be careful of gossip or of, I don't want to make it too freaky, but the hidden enemies thing in the 12th house can be your own self-destructiveness, or possibly people or things in the environment. For example, I'm a Taurus rising, and as Mars has been stationing to turn retrograde, we literally had someone break into our house while we're trying to sell it back in Maryland. Literally kind of like an intruder motif. Thankfully, it wasn't very destructive, but still that's that kind of like, but it draws our attention to things too. Like it's been a really good thing for me to reflect upon, and there's been really good insights and lessons that I've gotten from it. Okay, so reflecting on the Mars in your shadow spot, if you're a Taurus, in your blind spot, if you're a Taurus rising. Now let's go to Gemini rising. If you're a Gemini rising, Mars retrograde is going to be in your 11th house, which is the place of friends, groups, community, sometimes organizations. It's also associated with benefactors, well-wishers, people who, maybe add to our lives or act as important allies in some way. With Mars retrograde in this house, you might be doing some revision as to who your friends or who is enabling you in positive and in negative ways. You may also be looking at a certain degree of conflict or difficulty around groups of friends or within organizations that you belong to. These changes, again, for the most part, they will also offer opportunities for growth. So it's not just, there's going to be a bunch of chaos or stress, with friends or within groups or, organizational conflicts if you belong to some kind of religious or, professional group or something like that. Yeah, that's possible. But those conflicts are meaningful and they are there to deliver a message that you need right now. So watch for, also like what kinds of conflicts and fights are worth giving yourself your time, your money, your energy, or your resources to, and which are, a waste. People might ask you to join something or be a part of something right now, or lend your help or your energy on some level, and you have to be really careful that it's something you really believe in. Do you want to participate in this fight, in this battle, in this effort, or not? All right, so some good lessons for Gemini rising with Mars in your 11th house of groups. Let's go forward to Cancer rising. If you're a Cancer rising, this Mars retrograde is happening in your 10th house, which is the place of career. So it's very common to see delays, setbacks, temporary problems or issues, some degree of conflict or working through conflict and, having to mediate and make compromises in the workplace. It could be that you are prevented or blocked from moving forward in the way that you would like to with your career right now, or that there's a temporary period that's sort of frustrating or limiting. And also, generally speaking, people who have been meaning to start something or who have been trying to, there's a new effort, there's a new product, there's a new, endeavor professionally, sometimes you're just going to get a little bit of the cosmic red light just held up and said, wait, hold back. And also, be careful of what kinds of conflicts you get into. It is possible to burn bridges with Mars retrograde in your 10th house. You want to, just be very mindful. If something isn't working, be very patient and try not to be too reactive and aggressive with things, because when Mars is retrograde in your career house, it's more easy to get fired or to create a conflict with coworkers or so be very careful about drama in the workplace. All right, we put Leo on the ascendant. And we're now putting Mars's retrograde into your 9th house if you're a Leo rising. This is the place of religion, spirituality, philosophy, higher education, long journeys. Mars's retrograde in this house can mean that there is a deeper, what do I want to call it? An exploration of faith and beliefs. Mars in the 9th house is a bit like Joan of Arc. It's got a mission, it's got a vision, and it's going to fight for it. But Mars retrograde, do I really believe this? Do I really want to fight for this? Is there a different strategy or approach that might be more effective? I'll never forget, I had a friend of mine in New York who was like, I would say kind of like a militant vegan. And it was during a Mars retrograde that this person realized that they needed to find a slightly different approach to teaching people about veganism, because they were constantly getting a response from people that wasn't so positive. And I just thought it was really interesting. This person doesn't know anything about astrology, but I thought it was really interesting that they sort of reflected on this, they're needing to take a different approach and sort of realizing that they were too militant about their beliefs during a Mars retrograde. That's the kind of thing that lands in the 9th house. There's some sense of, what do I fight for? What do I believe? What is my vision? What are my overarching beliefs? Also, the topic of teachers and learning in general can become both a source of conflict, and also there can be almost like laying down your sword and trying a new approach, and maybe more peaceful or patient approach somehow. So watch for those topics around the 9th house of religion and spirituality if you're a Leo rising, as well as higher learning. Now, if you're a Virgo rising, Mars retrograde is going to land in your 8th house. Now, this is a little bit heavier, right? Because the eighth house is or can be associated with death and loss. So there can be losses that are deeply transformative if you are a Virgo rising with Mars retrograde in your eighth house. At the same time, the eighth house is also a place that has to do with debts and obligations to others or that others have to us. And so there can be some visitation of these themes and maybe a leveling of the scales somehow, people paying you back or paying off loans or taking out loans or, but there may also be a conflict around what is owed or what you are obligated to give or what other people feel that they're obligated or they owe you. So watch for potential conflicts or what do I want to call it, mediation and the need for compromise around karmic debts with others. That's one thing that I think would probably for most people be a little bit more busy than death. But there can also be that letting go of things, surrendering things, and also facing different levels of fear or anxiety with Mars in the eighth house. That can be there as well. Healing old wounds, old traumas. It's a good one for Mars retrograde in the eighth. Now, if you're a Libra rising, of course, this lands right across the first and the seventh house axis for you, which means it's all about relationships. You'll have Mercury for a good portion of this month anyway, opposite that Mars in the seventh. For Libras, it's sort of quintessential time of looking at relationships, power struggles, needing to assert oneself, dominance, aggression, and it's a funny thing because Libras are often again, a Venus sign. So Mars is your natural opposite, just like Taurus. Mars has a lot of, there's important messages for you that come through Mars and that come through other people and relationships this month. And some of it may be uncomfortable for you because you're more of a Venus loving, person, kind of a Venus harmonizer, but don't count Mars out. Mars may require you to be more assertive or to take a stand for something, or to look at issues of individuality versus dependence in relationships. So those themes could be quite acute if you're a Libra rising. Now we'll move forward to put Scorpio in the first house. Now this is a really kind of a powerful one, and I'll explain why. Because first of all, Scorpio rising, you're a Mars-ruled sign. So this is your ruling planet. It's in the sixth house in its own sign. The sixth house was called the joy of Mars. I would see this as a period of potentially a period of rewards for hard work, because this Mars in the sixth house is such a fighter and it's such a powerful, strong place for Mars. Mars tends to be very sacrificial, hardworking in the sixth house. And you'll often see that, Mars in the sixth is pretty constructive, albeit it can be very exhausting and can sometimes indicate things like, even like, potential health problems. But overall, what I would see here is a different approach to work, a different approach to the use of your time, money, energy, resources, blood, sweat, and tears, and kind of saying, wait, I've been pouring myself into something. Is it the right thing? I've been making sacrifices. Are they the right ones? So if there needs to be a revision of how you are applying your will, your energy, your resources, what you're sacrificing for, what you're serving, it's going to be a really good time to take a look at that. And if there's some way in which you've not been serving correctly or you've been misaligned somehow, this transit probably will give you the feedback that you need. On the other hand, you do want to be careful about overexerting yourself, getting exhausted, sick. This is the time, if you're working out too hard, you could injure yourself. And also, it's a time of learning a different way of approaching conflict, dealing with conflict differently. All right, so those are for if you're a Scorpio rising, the Mars in that classic sixth house. It was called the joy of Mars. It's a pretty powerful Marsy time for Scorpios in particular. It's kind of doubling up on the Mars energy. Now, if you're a Sagittarius rising, we're putting Mars retrograde in your fifth house, which was called the joy of Venus in the house of good fortune. And it's related to pleasure. Well, Mars retrograde, in the fifth house, talk about impulse control. This is a placement where you've got to wonder about, kind of reckless, impulsive things that you do in the name of pleasure. For example, the classic ones with Mars in the fifth would be gambling, sex addiction, drinking, alcoholism, overspending, just anything that's a little on the side of hedonism, kind of unchecked, and could get you into trouble. And there might be some feedback for you there this month if something's a little out of control and needs to be reeled in a bit, or reined in a bit, I should say. So now the other thing about Mars retrograde in the fifth house is that it can bring up issues around children, like children in rebelliousness, or children in behavioral issues, or children in health, or something like that. So don't be surprised if this Mars retrograde somehow focuses in on the topic of children or pregnancy or kids or something like that. The problems that you face, remember, they're not going to last that long. So don't stress out, but know that a little bit of stress or tension around these themes or topics would be normal until about the middle of November. If we put Capricorn on the ascendant, then we're taking Mars retrograde and we're putting it into the fourth house of home, family, parents, roots. So you're talking about Mars retrograde, and you're thinking in the fourth house about what you could think about, for example, someone renovating the inside of their home, or someone making an addition or redoing the bathroom, where there's a certain degree of chaos and redoing something. On the other hand, old conflicts from the family or the ancestral past. That's a kind of Mars in the fourth house topic. Conflicts in the family, conflicts with parents, but also the potential for old conflicts to be healed or revisited in positive or constructive ways. So you get that theme of revision, revising, healing, going back to go forward. But there's a process happening around the topic of home, family, and parents this month. Well, and for all the way, again, through mid-November. So watch for that if you're a Capricorn rising. Now, if you're an Aquarius rising, this goes into your third house. Now, the third house pertains to your immediate environment around you, but it's such a broad and kind of complicated area. For example, the media that you take in every day, the things that you read on your screen every day, or your phone every day, the emails that you write, the bike path that you ride on to work every day, or the subway ride, or the just kind of the hustle and bustle of the immediate things that you do around every day, almost like a beehive. It's a very busy place. And it can also pertain to your mind and communication. So Mars in this environment, Mars retrograde in this environment, I'm ditching my car, I'm going to ride my bike or walk, or I got a new piece of technology, or my technology breaks down, or I'm looking at anger, frustration in my communication or speech patterns, or you're just looking at the way that Mars has an impact, negatively or positively, in your immediate environment, in the life of the mind, and the potential, again, for some healing or revision, especially if Mars is there in an unhealthy way, could be pronounced. It also could really literally just point to things like, a change, anytime a planet goes retrograde in the third house, it can mean like a change of technology, or a simple change in terms of how you get to work every day, or sometimes they're very, very basic conflicts around siblings or neighbors or people in your neighborhood, or the immediate environment. Like for a lot of people, it's like Aquarius rising, we put Mars retrograde in the third house. Think about all the fires in Northern California and Oregon, and you think about Mars retrograde in the third house, it's like, well, the neighborhood's on fire. You know what I mean? Like, that's an extreme example, but the idea that the world around you could be shimmering with Mars, and that there'll be lessons to be learned from Mars's proximity to your local and in your local environment. All right, so that's if you're an Aquarius rising. Now, if you are a Pisces rising, last but not least, this places Mars retrograde in your second house of money and finances. So there can be revisions, changes to how you make money, different kinds of expenditures that come in and temporarily set you back. That would be normal. Again, don't worry, it'll eventually pass. It can be a change to your financial structure, salary, negotiating new terms of a contract at work. There can also be changes in terms of, people in your environment may need things from you, or may ask you to give some of your resources. People are saying, hey, can you give me some money? Or I need your time, or I need your help. And what you have to give or don't have to give, that could be an important topic, as well as the sense of what resources you have, what kinds of things you own or possess. Sometimes Mars retrograde is going to be I'm going to have a yard sale or something like that. I'm going to get rid of a bunch of stuff. What you have or don't have, and how it's contributing to your overall happiness or not, and probably wanting to make some changes, or being maybe sometimes the universe kind of forces changes to happen around these topics as well. But Again, don't stress too much because Mars is in a powerful sign and it's direct movement. By the end of this, when you get into November through the end of the year, things should start to recover if there's been difficulties. All right, so that's what I've got for you. If you're a Pisces rising, that takes us all the way through. So that's what I have for today. I hope that this was interesting. Please share your stories with me. Tell me what kinds of things you're experiencing already with Mars retrograding in whatever house it is retrograding in your own birth chart. And don't forget that my new class is also coming up. Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic starts on Saturday, November 14th, meets 30 times in the year, plus 12 guest lecturers, plus breakout tutoring and study sessions. It's a great program for people who want to learn ancient astrology, classical traditional astrology, and learn how to apply it in a kind of a counseling setting with live clients, which is a big part of the program. You can watch remotely from any part in the world. They're all recorded. All the material is put into a online class folder for you if you can't make it live, but there are live webinars each week. There is need-based tuition for people who need it, people who are struggling due to COVID-19. So check that out if you need it. There's an early bird rate, which you can also save $500 off if you pay for the course up front. And there's also a payment plan if you need that. So we try to make it really accessible for people. And if you have any questions about the course, you can check it out at nightlightastrology.com or email me at info@nightlightastrology.com. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take it easy. Bye.